Hey everybody, this is Robert People of RobertPeople.com, and you are listening to People's Court. Thank you for tuning in. Today is Monday, February 18, 2019. Happy President's Day. So earlier today in Florida, an 11-year-old was arrested for not standing for the Pledge of Allegiance. Now before you say, well, Robert, that's not exactly why he was arrested, guess what? I know. I'm simply repeating what a lot of the media reports say, the headlines and so on, what they've shown. However, this all stemmed from him, this 11-year-old child, who was not a viable threat, I would imagine. This 11-year-old child not standing for the Pledge of Allegiance, this is what this all stemmed from again. Of course, the way it went is simple. Pledge of Allegiance went as it did every day. Child refused to stand up. The teacher told him to do so, and the child responded in the effect, or to the effect, that he's not going to stand for a racist flag. Understood? We are still in America, correct? There's a little thing called freedom of speech. Well, the child wasn't a white child, so you know how it is. It's a little different for us, you know. So, so this is where we are. Now, the teacher, rather than just allowing the child to exercise his First Amendment right, that just no matter who wants us to have it and who doesn't, all Americans are guaranteed this right, along with many others. Rather than the teacher just allowing this child to do that, the teacher decided to argue back with the student, and to the not to simply maybe get his opinion or speak, you know, like the mature adult she should be, but she goes into all this. Well, if I was in a country, this is the tone of what she said. If I was in a country where I didn't feel like I was welcome, I would leave. Why is a grown up telling a child this? I don't know. This is a child, 11 years old. So I figure we should be able to handle that a little bit better. Now, the child, of course, is saying whatever back, as children do. So I'm not going to sit here and paint this child to be some innocent angel, because I'm well aware. We know I have an 11-year-old myself. They are not angels. I have two children, actually. One is 11 now. The other one was 11 a few years ago. So I get it. Trust me, I do. But the teacher, again, continued to what I imagine was berate this child, until the child began to get a little more unruly, to the point that apparently police needed to be called, and whatever took place, whatever transpired, there was apparently a dire need to put handcuffs on this child and take him away. Now, what I find interesting are all the responses, of course. As with anything, especially when it involves a person of color, there are constantly, always, someone who's going to come out and make excuses for them being treated in that manner. Again, here we are, 11 years old. We have 11 years old, and we have a substitute teacher. Let's not forget that part, because a gentleman earlier wanted to debate with me on Facebook. Not sure why anybody would want to do that, especially as far as something like this goes. But he decided, well, this substitute teacher, I guess she gets a pass because of that. And his explanation was, didn't know the policy, wasn't aware of the policy that children weren't required to stand. Well, I think that's a problem now, isn't it? You got a substitute teacher working at your school who isn't aware of the policies. That makes it acceptable. What else can this substitute teacher say? Or what can they, what can they say? What can they do where they can just use the excuse and where we can give them a pass because, quote, they didn't know the policy? And for the record, the teacher has been, she's prohibited from teaching in that district, again, because of this incident, because there's no question to anyone, the powers that be, that she was wrong about what she did. So, and we didn't need them to tell us that. We were aware of it ourselves. Again, this is about the Pledge of Allegiance, and her response should have been no response. Now, the child was being disruptive as it was going on, and nothing was being said to him. Now, I think that's a little bit of a different story. But the child not standing up, that alone is not a problem. It's not only the Constitution, but it's in the school's handbook that children are not required to stand up. Of course, they need written permission from their parents. I don't see why that's essential either. Because why do you need written permission to exercise freedom of speech? I know it's different with children, but we're not talking about these children running around cussing people out, cussing out the teachers, the administration, and all that. We're talking about sitting during Pledge of Allegiance. So this is where we are. And it was the same thing for the national anthem. I might have said that a few times, but same thing for that. There's nothing saying we got to stand for that. But where we are in society today is, of course, that the national anthem and the Pledge of Allegiance has been a weapon used against people who believe they are oppressed, people who are, and many folks of color, who don't agree with what it stands for. Now, something else that gets brought up, and I've seen this excuse used also, is troops, military. It's disrespect the military to not stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. Same thing for that national anthem. Disrespects the military. I've did 21 years in the military. Again, I say that once more. And I didn't fight for people to just do what another group of people wanted them to do. I fought for rights. That's why I raised my right hand, to fight for rights. As much as I might have an issue with you doing something, guess what? You still have the right to do it. The same way you shouldn't try to tell people what they can and can't eat in restaurants, what they can and can't shop for when they go to the grocery store, where they can and can't park when there are, open spaces available. You don't get to tell them whether they stand or sit during the national anthem or the Pledge of Allegiance. Now, why this escalated that much with an 11-year-old child to where police needed to be called? Come on. Here we go with this again. And again, this is the person of color, so we know that folks are already trigger happy to do that anyway. 911 is on speed dial when it comes to folks of color. Whether they are adults or children, this is what happens. And as always, we're talking about 11 years old, and people can't figure out how to handle. This child is not running around with a weapon. Because, with a weapon, take the child down, do what you need to do. But this child isn't running around with a weapon. He's being unruly. They should be able to handle that by now. I get it. The child's going to say F the substitute. I understand how that is, too. Trust me. I'm not expecting the child to toe the line with a substitute teacher. I was in school once. I know that we tried to do a little more with the substitute. I'm smart enough to get all that. But again, we jump from that to arrest. You say, Robert, what would you do in that situation? Well, for one, I wouldn't have told the child to stand up. I'd set it up on the handbook to know that I wouldn't be able to do that. And by the time police are called, I probably would have said, no, let's not go there with this. We don't need to arrest this child for this. I should be able to handle this. Okay. That's me. People have said the same. Well, what would you do? So that answers that question. But here we are again. Now this child has a police record, not because this child committed murder, not because the child raped someone, not because they stole something, vandalism, arson, anything like that. No, because he didn't stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. Now, you can be technical and, again, say, well, he wasn't arrested for that reason, but it all stemmed from it. Again, as I said in the beginning of this broadcast, it stemmed from him not standing up. Now, of course, it escalated far, far further than it needed to go, but it was still based on the fact that he didn't stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. I don't know why we're at a time where forced patriotism, people are so giddy and so gung-ho about forced patriotism. Forced patriotism is a serious problem. This is not North Korea the last time I checked. And the funny thing about the word patriotism is that the tone of the word itself implies that you shouldn't be forced to do it. How are you a patriot if you got to be forced to do something? How is it patriotism if somebody has to tell you to do it? How is it patriotism if there are rules that somebody believes we should follow as far as how we do it, when we do it, and so on? How is that patriotism? Yes, I'm a patriot, but because, this book says I'm supposed to be. That's not patriotism. You should want to do that. And far too many people in this country, largely many of the ones who support our current quote-unquote president, are the ones pushing this agenda, because the ones kicking back and pushing back the most are people of color. And that's just another excuse, another reason to have a problem with blacks, Latinos, and so on. But hide behind the military. Hide behind, well, it's patriotism. Hide behind our president. Forced patriotism, that's not what this country is about. That's not a question, that's a statement. That is a statement. Now, did the child handle everything as they should have done? No. Absolutely not. Absolutely not. Again, I'm not paying this child to be a saint or an angel. We know 11-year-olds. Got it. But did the child do something arrest worthy? No. Because I'm hearing unruly, the child said this and that, I got all that. But nothing to where the child needs to be arrested. Suspended, I'll give you suspended. I'll give you something. Not to say, hey, just let the child just go about their. No, I'm not saying that. But again, here we are, trigger happy to have kids arrested of color. And you wonder, did this incident today, would that have put the child in a better place as far as what he feels about the flag? Someone also mentioned that somebody likely, taught the child to be that way. Well, there's no question about that. That's not a huge revelation. Of course, somebody taught the child to be like this. And again, as much as I might disagree with whomever teaching the child this, again, freedom of speech. Whether you think we should have it or not, we do. Freedom of speech is guaranteed by the Constitution to all Americans. Some don't deserve it more than others. Everybody gets it. Nothing in the Constitution says if you're a white person and you don't like black people, you don't like Latinos, then you can dictate how much freedom of speech they get. No. Everybody has it. And far too many people out there, whether you want to admit it or not, can't stand the fact that people who do not have white skin have this freedom, have this right. We, as blacks, Latinos, are considered as second-class citizens, and other minorities, not just these two, not just our two groups, but other minorities as well. That's what this whole thing is about. How dare a person of color have the nerve to exercise freedom of speech, right? I'm not telling you got to like the fact that people don't like to stand for the Pledge of Allegiance or even the national anthem. Got that. I'm not trying. Trust me, if you were taught the wrong way since being a child, I'm not about to waste time teaching you the right way. But one thing that we all, especially all you super patriots out there, to include you, Donald Trump, one thing we all should know, the very basic thing we should know, is that part of being a patriot is knowing what the Constitution is about. And being patriots means you're a little bit better than everybody that you claim. All the people who you claim are not patriots, you should be a little bit better than. That means they should be the ones saying who doesn't have the right to freedom of speech, not you. You're supposed to be a whole lot better than them and know a whole lot more. Know that Constitution forward and backwards, and you exercise that. You set the example better than anyone, especially an 11-year-old child could. Inexcusable. RobertPeople.com. Thanks for listening.